Well, hello everybody. Danny back from Deepsouth Homestead. I'm in our sitting room today. It's pretty chilly outside. That wind is howling out there. This is a Sunday. Today's the 10th, I believe it is. Yeah, today is Sunday the 10th. Just sitting here looking out the windows at the cabin and the pond and everything, and we only got an inch of rain. Everybody talked about how much rain we was gonna get. Well, we got 1 inch. Didn't really do nothing but make the pond water a little bit muddy looking, but that's about it. Didn't get any more. We're thankful though to get what we got, and our hearts goes out to those that lost their lives in Tennessee to the tornadoes. But I have tried to tell everybody the weather is going to be a roller coaster from this point forward. It's not normal. We have a system coming in that's going to cause all of this to happen. I'm not going to get into that because that may be what gets my channel videos pulled. But anyway, sitting here, Wanda and I were talking just a few minutes ago about getting ready for this spring. I told her, I says, now's the time. I mean, you can't just wait till it's time to plant to start getting your garden ready. Because if you do, you'll have limited success. Now you can have some success, but it'll be very limited. Right now, you ask, well, what should I be doing right now? Well, at this particular point, Wanda and I have been doing the soil samples because that's key. We have a link in the description down below. You can go over to Grower Solutions, and this is not a video to sell anything. I'm just telling you what we do. But we do have a link, and you can get some off on it by using the code we have and everything. But guys, you need to get a soil sample. Now, we've done a soil sample video here on our containers here a while back, and you can go back and find it. It's in the playlist back there about what was lacking in our containers, because plants in containers, just because you go buy potting soil and you put some organic fertilizer in there and stuff like that, and you think you've really done some good, that's not necessarily the truth. So we did soil sample tests on our containers, and we found out what our containers were lacking in, and that's what we'll be adding to our containers in order for them to be a success. Now, will you grow stuff? Yes, you can grow stuff. Will you have some success? Yes, you'll have some success. But the whole key, let me say this. The whole key to beginning to prepare your garden in the fall is for nutrition density. Now we can grow, farmers every day prove this, they can grow some of those beautiful fruits and vegetables and stuff like that on farms and things of this nature, and they are pretty. You go to the store and look at them, they look beautiful, blemish free, been sprayed, the devil been sprayed out of them. But the key is, what is the nutritional value of these fruits and vegetables and different things that's being grown. Now, I've been doing some research on this for quite a while now. Back in the 1950s, I'm just going to start in the 50s. It actually went further back, way further back than that, but things began to change after the 1950s. And the reasoning behind that is land has been farmed to death. Now, in the 1950s, plants were probably, I think they said, were like 4 to 5 times more nutritionally dense with nutrition than they are now. We do have a phenomenon going on now that I have discovered in a lot of the research that I've done. That is, even in leafy green plants and all kinds of other vegetables out there, the plants are having a lot more carbohydrates in them than they do the other minerals that they need for a body to be healthy. I was even looking at where leafy greens even are loaded with carbohydrates now. And a lot of vegetables are loaded with carbohydrates, and they normally would not even have them in it. But now, because of weather conditions, soil conditions, people not really utilizing minerals in their soil preparation like they need to, the plants just aren't nutritionally dense anymore. We have a lot more heart issues today and stuff like that, and cancers and different things like that. And that's come the heart issues comes from the fact that most plants now are magnesium deficient, almost completely magnesium deficient. And people begin to load up on, well, I love potatoes, and they load up on potatoes, and potatoes is really high in potassium. Potassium is what causes the heart to beat regular, and this is not a medical, for medical information. I'm just giving you the stats on some of this stuff. And the plants are becoming more loaded with carbohydrates now, and the carbohydrates, how carbohydrates, they turn to sugar in your body absorbs them, and it becomes sugar in the bloodstream and all, and your body absorbs it as that and stores it as fat lots of times. Now, you have to have carbohydrates in order to function, but there's a certain amount of them. But now the thing about it is why are all of a sudden all the plants becoming so high in carbohydrates rather than other minerals and vitamins that they need? Well, it all goes back to not preparing the soil properly in the fall, because the fall is the time to get your soil ready. Because if you use hydrated lime or pelletized lime and stuff like this, now you can use what's called fast-acting lime. You can do that in the spring, but it only lasts for 1 year and it's over. But if you use the Dolomite limes and different things like that, and you spread them out in a powder form on the ground, it sweetens the ground up. It'll last for about 3 years doing it that way. And you want to be able to get your pH in your garden for most garden vegetables. Now, this is not every garden vegetable, but most garden vegetables, if you can get around 6.5 to 6.8 to 7, 7 is like the perfect pH, then your garden will grow usually beautiful, even with minimal amount of fertilizer. But the problem is we don't seem to pay attention to our pH, because it doesn't matter how much organic fertilizer you use, it doesn't matter how much chemical fertilizer you use, or what you do really, how much mulch or how much compost and all this kind of stuff you use. If the pH is not right, the plant cannot take up all the minerals and vitamins that it needs to be a very healthy plant. Now, amending the soil in the fall is something that all farms used to do. They went through and they mucked out all the barn stalls. My daddy used to tell me about this as a young man and a kid growing up. His job was he would hire on with these farms. His daddy was a tenant farmer anyway, so they was already on these big farms, and they would go through as a kid. His job was to muck the stalls out, shovel out all the cow manure, put it in these wagons, and they had mules that pulled these wagons around the fields, and it spread cow manure all over the fields in the fall, and then they would turn it under before the sun had a chance to deplete it of its nitrogen. And my dad would tell me, now son, don't worry about using cow manure if it hasn't been in a stall. He said, because that's virtually useless. He said, over the years we learned tenant farming that by using cow manure that had been in stalls, they had urinated in it, and the urine was loaded with nitrogen, and therefore the manure in the barn was loaded with nitrogen into it. And if you put it out and turned it under pretty quick before the sun had a chance to actually suck all the nitrogen out of it, then you could grow a pretty good crop. Now, my dad also talked about liming the fields. Now, he also talked about, and back years ago, he said they would burn the fields off. He said when they got through with harvesting all the vegetables out of the fields and frost had done killed everything, then they would go out and take the mules and plow furrows around the outside edges of the field, or disc around it with the mules and everything, pull in the old drag discs. And he says we'd set the fields on fire and burn them off. He says, and put that ash, that potash, back into the soil. And then they would come behind it and they would lime it. Now he said, We always had, most of the old shotgun houses that they lived in always had what they called a kitchen garden, which was a little garden right outside the door of the house, and it usually had a little picket fence around it or something to keep, they had stuff to keep chickens from getting over in it. And inside that, Dad told me, he said they would take the ashes out of the fireplace or the wood heaters. Most of them were wood heaters because those shotgun houses didn't have fireplaces, so most of them had wood heaters. And they would sprinkle them over the garden. He said that would bring the pH back up and also put the potash back into the soil. He said, now you'd have to be very careful if you use the same plot year after year after year. You could get the pH too high. Now, some vegetables don't like high pHs. You know, I mean, you take like Irish potatoes. Irish potatoes, they don't like a high pH. They like to stay around 5.5. And if you get a real high pH on them, then your potatoes will take on what we call an alligator skin. The outside of the potato skin will begin to have cracks all in it, like an alligator skin. And the potatoes don't really grow as good as they should, and they have a different taste to them if you allow that to happen. So be aware of what you're going to plant and where you're going to plant it, and what kind of lime you use. Now, if you just use plain old lawn lime or something like that, or if you use, you can also supplement lime with basic slag. Basic slag lasts 1 year, just like, regular yard lime does. And after that year, you could plant potatoes back behind where you limed, and you probably would be okay. But now if you use the powdered type lime or the Dolomite lime, then you're looking at a 3-year period wherever you lime it at before you could actually begin to plant something that had a lower pH there. Now you can alter the pH by adding sulfur back to the soil. Wherever you're going to put potatoes, you could put sulfur down the row and you could drop the pH down to 5.5 and grow your potatoes. But this being the time of the year, the fall like it is, fixing to be winter time, it is key time to get your soil ready. I mean, get your soil samples done and get them back. Now, the ones we do at Grower Solutions, it's a $30 thing to get it done, but that's all you pay. They come back and they test it for you have to go back and look at our videos we've done on this. They test it for things like boron, zinc, all the things, not just the NPK that most soil samples do. Because plants need more than just NPK. They need all these other trace minerals in order to be nutrient-dense plants. Now, I believe, if I remember correctly, our containers that we did the soil samples on ended up to be 86% nutritionally dense. Now, we were lacking in some calcium, which I can put that in there. We were lacking in a little bit of nitrogen. Our pH was off a little bit, so I needed to raise the pH up on them. But, when the pH is not where it needs to be at in the soil, like I said to start with, no matter how much fertilizer you put, the plant can't take it up. You're wasting money, basically. We also add, most of the soils in the deep south down here where we live at are magnesium deficient. And that's apparent because of heart problems that's going on, and they're deficient in copper and magnesium, and both of those play a huge part in the health of a heart. So we go back and we add the my mind just went blank, guys. Epsom salt. There we go. We add the Epsom salt to our plants. So not a lot, maybe a tablespoon sprinkled around a plant, watered in once every maybe 2 or 3 weeks through the summer. And that usually puts enough magnesium back, because if you overdo it with magnesium, you can bind up other minerals in the soil where the plant can't take them up. Of course, with everything going on in the atmosphere right now with the chemtrailing and stuff like that, we know the government has come out and admitted that they're doing it, and they told why they're doing it. And also the aluminum that they're using to block out the sun's rays, the harmful rays, they said. The aluminum has fallen to the ground. It's raising the pH in the soil unnaturally when it does that. And as a result, a lot of the seed companies now have aluminum resistant seeds that they are making. Now, when that happens and the aluminum binds up the phosphorus in the soil, What you have to do at that point is you have to add liquid phosphorus. Now we do it through Dr. Earth has some liquid phosphorus that we use. Schultz has liquid, we use powdered phosphorus, but it mixes with water and makes it a liquid. That way the plants can take up that liquid phosphorus back into them, and even though the soil's pH is being changed unnaturally and binding up the phosphorus, this allows us to be able to put the phosphorus there for the plant, especially while it's blooming, because while the plant's blooming, that's when it needs the most phosphorus. And it really helps to boost the root system of the plant and help it to be able to take up everything that it needs to be able to bloom healthy and make beautiful fruit or beautiful vegetables on it. So these guys, I'm telling you, these are some things that we're doing here at Deepsouth. Now, not per se this year at Deepsouth. We're doing it at Pecan Grove because we're letting Deepsouth rest, because we believe in letting our land rest after several years of using it. We're going to be transferring everything over to Pecan Grove and growing all of our fruits and vegetables over there this year. Now, our fruits will still grow here because there's trees here. There's nothing we can do about that. They're just here. They're going to grow every year regardless. This year, most of them didn't make, and that's because of the weather, and also the simple fact we just felt like the trees themselves knew they needed a rest, and if the trees knew they needed a rest, and I think we need to follow suit with the gardens here and let them rest. But that's why we're busting it over at Pecan Grove to try to get the soil over there ready. Now, this soil's been laying, you might call dormant, for almost over 30 years because the gentleman didn't garden or do anything with the land for 4 or 5 years before he passed away some 25 years ago. And so the land's been laying dormant almost 30 years with really nothing being done, and we did send off soil samples from that property. We were shocked at the height of some of the vitamins and minerals that was in the soil, and their levels blew us away on a lot of them, and then some of them were rock bottom, which meant that we needed to bring stuff in and try to boost, that kind of stuff back up. Because, we got a lot of pecan trees over there, and we're trying to get those back to where they get everything they need to be able to bear. And likewise, you should do the same thing. That's another benefit to taking a soil sample. We get lots of emails. People go, well, my fruit trees just didn't bear anything this year, or my pecan trees didn't do anything, or my hazelnut trees didn't do anything, or my blueberries didn't do anything this year. Well, some of it might have had to do with the simple fact that whenever you get frosts and freezes and stuff like this, or these Indian summers, or during the wintertime everything gets warm and blooms out, and then a freeze comes and kills it, or a late freeze will kill the blooms off of lots of stuff that bloom early. I have told people that talk to me, and I consult about different things, to always plant trees that are just a little bit one zone. I plant 2 different kinds of trees. One that's one zone warmer than what you are, and some that's one zone cooler than what you are. That way you're sure to capture, if the weather changes, at least you might have something bearing all year. If it stays a lot warmer and you don't have a lot of chill hours, then hey, the one that's made for the warmer weather should kick it in Cadillac. If you have a normal year, plant the trees that's normal for your area. If you have a lot colder area than what you have and you get way more chill hours than you normally do, well, we know the warm one may bear because it got its chill hours, plus the one that needed a lot of chill hours may bear, plus the one that normally grows there might bear. The only thing is if you get a late freeze on the latter 2 of those, then it can kill off the warm season and the season where you're at, but the cool season ones may not have bloomed quite yet. So we're trying to take everything into account as to where we live and what's going on and how it actually works here. Because of the wacky weather we're having, we feel like it's best to try and maybe compensate for all different zones, the ones below us and the ones above us, and just try to make sure that we fill in all the gaps. Now, the soil is alive. Most people don't realize the soil is alive, and when you plant a plant has cells just like our body has cells. Now, they're somewhat a little bit different, But they utilize their stuff through photosynthesis from the sun, and the simple fact that it uses chlorophyll to pull up lots of nutrients up out of the soil. And we get, I will say this, we got a lot of, not a lot, we got a few people this year that emailed us and said, we tried the electroculture that you talked about, our gardens didn't do anything. Well, electroculture is not magic, okay? In order for electroculture to operate and to function like it needs to, the soil needs to be nutrient dense in order for that to happen, and then it enhances it. So the people who probably use the copper for electroculture probably had soil that was very poor to start with, and they didn't really do anything. They were looking for a rabbit's foot, I'm pretty sure. And electroculture is not using a rabbit's foot, okay? I mean, it is a science. It is the use of electrons and different things like that, and ions and all in the soil. And it's got to be placed in exactly the right spots around your plants. I mean, it's got to be on the south side of the plant. It's got to be no more than 2 to 3 inches from a plant. I mean, there's rules that goes along with it in order to make it work efficiently. The copper needs to be wound in a particular direction. It needs to be, if you're in the northern hemisphere, I believe it is, it has to be wound clockwise. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it needs to be wound counterclockwise. The best way to figure out what you need where you live at is go flush the toilet or something like that, or let water run down a sink drain and see which way it goes. Does it go counterclockwise or does it go clockwise down the drain? I know that may sound silly, but it actually works. And electroculture is not anything new. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I first heard about it through a man called Jerry Baker. When I was I'd say probably in the early 80s, I found it. And once he began to talk about it, I began to do research on it. And I've been using it now for over 30 years in one form or the other. I don't talk about it a lot, but I've had tremendous success using it. Now, I don't only use copper. I use zinc and other metals. Now, iron is not one that is conducive to use. You know, mainly coppers, and copper's the best. Let me put it that way. Copper is the absolute best. Now, zinc will work. And a lot of people go, yeah, but I put tomato cages around my tomatoes and they didn't do nothing. Well, if you don't have galvanized, zinc-coated tomato cages and you just got concrete reinforcement wire or something like that, you're not really doing any good. You've got to have the right formulas for all this stuff to work. And look, the thing about it is, I was skeptical about this to begin with, but the thing about it is anything that will enhance my ability to grow my food, I'm willing to give it a shot. You know, I mean, there was a couple of years I wasn't very successful at using it, but then once I began to realize what worked and what didn't work, the plants that flourished, the plants that didn't flourish, what did I do wrong, I began to fine-tune this stuff down to a really nice art where I'm actually, right now, I put it this way, I have electroculture in all of my citrus trees outside, or most of my citrus trees, not all of them, but most of them. And here we are in December, and my citrus trees are blooming like crazy in freezing weather and putting on fruit. Now, how crazy is that? I've got citrus trees out here loaded with young fruits all over them that I've got to try somehow or other to get them into a place. Since I've messed my neck up, I can't really lift those heavy pots, so I'm having to work around and figure out a plan or a method to where I can get those heavy pots and get them into an environment that is conducive to fruit of citrus type, where it's not too cold, not too hot, and I can take care of them and see if this fruit will actually grow and produce through the winter months. Now, we get asked all the time, what do y'all fertilize your citrus trees with? We just use a well-balanced fertilizer. And the key to citrus trees, once again, is the pH. And people say, well, can I use these pH test kits? Well, most pH test kits are not very accurate. I have 2 or 3 different pH meters, and in order for a pH meter to be accurate, it really has to be done properly. It takes a certain amount of water and it takes a certain amount of soil in a cup. You can't just go over and stick it in the ground by a plant and expect it to work. That's not going to happen. You got to take some of the soil and some of the water, and you have to make sure your water is not like really acidic water. You got to, I mean, I don't know how to say it. I mean, you can go to town and you can buy these jugs of water that's pure water, and they're not supposed to have any acid in them or anything like that. And you can use that water to do your soil test kits with, and probably have a lot better results. So I wanted to take today and just remind us, I guess, more than anything else, that now is the time to be getting our gardens ready. And a lot of people go, yeah, but should I throw all my dirt out from my containers and start with new dirt? No, you shouldn't throw it all out. What you should do is amend it. Each individual container needs to be tested and to see what's deficient in it. I can already tell you from container gardening, I don't care what kind of soil you use, you're gonna need to add some Epsom salt, magnesium, at least a tablespoon. You're gonna need to at least add that. And you're gonna need to add a little bit of liquid phosphorus in it. That's a given. Now, nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, all that depends on the soil, where it came from, how much of what's in it, how much compost is in it, things of that nature. But you're probably more than likely going to need to add just a little bit of lime to it in order to get that pH up to a 6.5 to a 6.8. Most soils in the Deep South run about 5.5 to 6. Some may go to 6.5, but most will be in the 5.5 to 6 range just naturally. So the things that we talked about today, really, if you plan on growing yourself a good garden this spring, you really need to get on the ball right now, and you really need to be amending, even if it's containers. Our containers over at Pecan Grove right now, I'm already amending the soil in them. I've got some containers, it's just empty containers sitting there that I've added some soil to, and I'm putting some cow manure in. That's fresh cow manure. I'm mucking out my stalls, putting some fresh cow manure in them, because by the time spring gets here, it'll be broke down enough that I can use it, and it'll be nice and viable. Now, a lot of people are going, yeah, you better watch out for E. coli and all that kind of stuff. I don't worry about that, to be honest with you. The only time I'd worry about E. coli or anything like that is if I was planting green onions to eat, or if I was planting leafy greens or anything like that, and right against the ground might splatter up on them. But we wash everything we have really, really good, so we've never had a problem, and I don't foresee one in the future. And we do let it break down and compost. Now, if you take fresh cow manure out of the stall and take it out and pile it up in a pile, the sun will bleach a lot of the nitrogen out of it, and then you just got a good filler is what you have. So if you want to pile it up outside and mulch it out into piles, you need to cover it so that with tarps, so the sun cannot draw all the nitrogen out of it, and let it decompose until spring. So, guys, I don't want to bore you to death. We'll just keep talking like this, but I want to just encourage each and every one of you, take time, get your gardens ready now for the spring. And remember, if you're an organic gardener, remember the rules for organic gardening. If you're going to be using bone meal, blood meal, and all this kind of stuff that's organic, sea kelp, all this kind of stuff that's organic, you got to put it in the ground 2 to 3 months before you use it, before you plant your plants. Because when you put it in the ground, remember the rules, you're only going to get about 8 to 9% of it up front. And then in the next 4 months, it's going to take to break the rest of it down to where the plant can actually use it. And most plants are through growing by 4 months. So if you put it in now and let it be breaking down, by the time you plant your plants in the spring, you can add just a little bit more, and the others already broke down to where your plants can actually utilize it, because it is organic and it does need to break down. So once again, thank you guys for taking the time to come over here to Deepsouth Homestead and spend time watching our videos. We do ask that you subscribe. YouTube has a shadow band. We don't go anywhere. We've been at the same numbers now for months. And hit that notification bell so that when we do put up new videos, we do 2 or 3 videos a week. Hit that notification bell and you'll be notified, and you'll be able to watch the videos as we make them. So thank you guys once again from Deep South Homestead.